Hi, everybody. Today is not Betsy and Thomas. We're wearing another hat. We're going to be another avatar. And our avatar names here now are Odin and Frigg. And Odin and Frigg like to sit around and speculate. What do you say? We're like bet. We like to wager bets. And we do this a lot with one another, but we typically don't record them because, we wanted to get everybody caught up to speed with what the real news is and not our speculation. So this is pure speculation. Heads up, tune out if you don't want to listen to it. Okay, I asked old Odin, I said, now, what do you think Trump is going to say to the Queen when the Queen or Camilla or Charles, they have to reel him in and say, look, you don't understand. We are your masters. Right? And then you said, well, he's going to give them an answer similar to what he gave to Merkel when he went and visited them back then with NATO. And so that's when I said we should share that.
Yes, and you remember that the NATO people were in debt to us. They wouldn't pay their bills, and they were giving us a hard time. And then Trump shows up, and he doesn't want to talk about NATO. First thing he says is, did you all know that Angela Merkel has a deal with Vladimir Putin where Nord Stream 1 is still coming in only to a German port, and that's where she's getting all the oil that she's selling you at that hiked-up price, which she's lied about the deal with Putin? They immediately dropped to their knees and promised to pay, and then pulled out their checkbooks and literally started giving him money. Because why? He pulled the plug. He told them what he knows, which is the tip of the iceberg of corruption. So when he goes to Britain, what would he say to Theresa May, the Queen, or the evil Charles?
Yes, because they think that they're in charge. After doing that last audio with Christopher Strunk about the baby harvesting, I'm just so disgusted with the whole system and everything that we've uncovered about the British control over us. So I would think that they're going to make sure that Trump knows that they're in charge.
So you asked me what Trump would say to them when they're having tea, and when they can,
something polite.
First off, they have to take their hand and they have to do that gesture where they tell the servants to please back off. They're going to talk about something secret, because there's always a servant within reaching distance to any of these monarchs. But the point is, which is disgusting, but the point is to think that one human being is higher than another one because of blood lineage. That's my point. That's disgusting. And that there's still a monarchy in Europe. That's disgusting.
Okay, but let's get to the...
Trump would say to Theresa May, Theresa, did you know that 4 days before they wiretapped Trump Tower and my son and the whole group of set-up Russian spies they sent to get us, that your Allison Saunders, your Attorney General, had dinner with the Orrs?
The beautiful Nellie Orr.
Who is a Russian spy, as you just made me very aware of, which I didn't really think about.
Yes, she speaks Russian fluently.
She was working, and her husband is the head of international crimes and he can't be fired, though he was kicked off the Mueller team. He was the back channel for Christopher Steele after Christopher Steele was fired from the FBI. Remember, Christopher Steele worked for the FBI, and they paid $50,000 for each of the installments. Okay, there were 17 installments. The last one wasn't paid for. Comey paid for that. He lied about it all. Anyway, the point is, he's going to say that to her, and then to someone else he may say something like, did you know that on such and such a date, Robert Hannigan went into Fort Meade, Maryland, against Admiral Rogers, the head of NSA's command, and secretly wiretapped Trump Tower. Did you know that? Oh, and 4 days before that, Allison Saunders was having dinner with the Orrs.
And they're probably going, where does this guy get his intelligence? Because it's not coming from us.
And at that point, they would realize that they would have to do whatever they could, because if there is a Brexit, and if they actually leave the European Union, I should say the evil European Union, then Britain and its entire future will depend upon bilateral trade deals with America, done, of course, exclusively through Donald Trump. So they will be at his mercy. That's one of the reasons they've invited him to tea in the gold coach ride and the tea with Charles, who, of course, Charles will try to poison him.
But Charles does the ask, you said.
Charles is going to do an ask.
Yes.
Oh, yes. So that's what he would say. What would he say to Charles? He's not going to say, anything to Charles, Charles is going to ask him the following, but it will be done in a nice British polite way. He'll basically say, what is it that I can get you? What is it you want? That's the ask. He's going to say, what's your ask here? And most people would say, I'd want to be a Knight of Malta, so I'd be an insider trader for the rest of my life and become a billionaire like you and hide it all in offshore accounts, British offshore accounts.
But they can't, because Trump is already a billionaire.
That's the whole point. There's nothing they can offer him, and he's a straight-up guy.
And Trump is the king of the world right now. Charles can't even give him that.
Charles is his coachman and should not even ride in the coach with him. Now, Charles thinks that he's that powerful, and he's going to try to use his possible sway of being a monarch, the ultimate monarch of the world.
Too bad for him. He uses British intelligence, and it's not so good.
No, British intelligence, not so good. So he's going to ask Trump what the ask is. Trump, what are you asking? What do you want? Do you want to be the head of the United Nations? Do you want to be the head of this or that? Do you want to have a knighthood? Do you want to be a sir? Do you want to be a member of the Privy Council when you're no longer the president of the United States, the first time that'll ever happen? Anything you want, Mr. Trump, because if you get elected again, globalism is ended, and Charles and Tony Blair and the Queen and the Privy Council are all globalists. So it's going to be exciting when he's over there this time. Please, Mr. President, don't shake hands with anyone. They can pass to you an illness. Do not sleep where they tell you to sleep. Do not drink or eat anything that the British offer you. Your life is in extraordinary danger, as much as it possibly could be, 100%. Now, we just got to see, to cover up the Mueller rudeness that comes out and says, I'm not going to answer any questions ever. I'm going to hide all the evidence. I'm going to stick with my pronouncement that Trump is guilty until found guilty. And that's what he's using.
Not presumed
Innocent. That's what he says. No, there's no innocence.
Guilty. No,
I cannot allow myself to say that he's innocent of crimes, but I can't say he had a crime. And I can certainly say that it is not legal for me to charge him with an indictment for any criminal activity as president.
Can we find him guilty before we ever have a trial?
No, because on the same day that Mueller did that, they think the House, Nadler, who's recovered from his fainting spell or whatever it was, stroke, heart attack, whatever, they gave him every med they could to get him back on his feet to continue the attack, which he comes out and says Mueller says the opposite of what Mueller actually said, and he's going to use that. He says that Mueller was saying that he couldn't indict Trump because of the law, that he, through the Justice Department, couldn't indict Trump for obstruction of justice, but that would be the job then of the House Judiciary Committee to then bring impeachment because of lies and crimes. And at one point, the word collusion was used, but not in those exact order. So Nadler thinks he's going on, and he thinks that what Mueller has done is great. When asked if Mueller's going, it was so funny. They acted like he was in a press conference. It was the same person asking all the questions, and he wasn't press. And the answers were already written out, and the questions were at the top of the page. So Nadler, every time he was asked a question by this same exact person impersonating the mainstream media, he found his answer there. And his answer was nothing more than to repeat in a negative way. First off,
Thomas, this is flat out obstruction of justice.
Yes, it is. Robert Mueller used double negatives and disinformation, misinformation, and doublespeak. And so he himself could hardly say the doublespeak because it's so difficult to speak. But he said in it, the only thing honest said by Mueller was, you're innocent until proven guilty. That is not then what he then acted upon. He then said that Trump was guilty, though he couldn't charge him, though he couldn't say it, though there wasn't enough evidence to say that he was guilty. But that's not really his job because, and then he basically handed the baton on to Nadler, the head of the House Judiciary Committee. Now, that was to cover for what was really happening. The exoneration of Andrew McCabe through Michael Horowitz's Department of Justice Office of Inspector General investigation on not what was his lack of candor, which was put into a grand jury underneath a fixed judge who has yet to make a judgment, but obviously the judgment will be that Andrew McCabe will not be found guilty for having a lack of candor with Michael Horowitz. And Michael Horowitz says that yes, in fact, his report is a one-page report, and it's called the investigative summary. Now, when Robert Mueller gave his investigative summary, right? 448 pages of innuendo and accusations and lies and fake Russians and fake everything, and there was nothing real except low-hanging fruit of crimes committed by people who had committed them years before, Manafort, Gates, and the like, and process crimes for people who supposedly lied to them. But here we have what certain people, which we were in a battle with, and Frigg is going to make sure to talk to Betsy to make sure that it's posted, that we've already said this.
Oh, yeah.
Before.
Yeah, in December 2017. We did a full report on Horowitz, and I remember this great because, Q was up and running then, and Q said, trust Horowitz. And then you even have Conservative Treehouse, which we like a lot of his stuff, but Sundance was even saying Horowitz is a white hat and is going to come through. And we said, whoa, Nellie. And that's when we posted it.
Everyone except Aim for Truth, Anonymous
because
Patriots,
he's senior
and our
executive
friends
service
over at Americans for Innovation, and the Conclave, and a few members. That's it. That's the only people who said what I'm going to say again. Truth goes to the Inspector General office to die. There will be no truth from Horowitz. We showed you he is the corrupt person who is getting ready to take the place of the Washington, D.C. fixer, Robert Mueller. Horowitz is getting ready to be promoted, was going to be promoted to the highest position. He won't now because he can't seem to find, first off, he can't find guilt even though he says the following. And this is just absolutely shocking. He says that Andrew McCabe, though the name isn't mentioned here, that's who he's talking about, disclosed to the media the existence of information that had been filed under seal in federal court in violation of blah, blah, blah. Contempt of court. First charge. Second charge, provided without authorization FBI law enforcement sensitive information to reporters on multiple occasions, leaking. Each one is a separate charge, and these are beyond felonies, okay? And then the third, had dozens of official contacts with the media without authorization in violation of FBI policy, and actually accepted gratuities, tickets, so on and so forth, mentioning the $225 ticket in one specific instance. But just like Comey for Hillary's largest espionage scandal and worst violation of security agreement in U.S. history with her stupid emails and the DNC stupid emails, don't even get me started. And Comey does what? Exonerates her. Guess what? Exactly as we said, only people out there, period. Michael Horowitz would find Andrew McCabe completely innocent of everything because first off, let me read the words. Prosecution of this person was declined. Horowitz did not indict him. As we told you, if Horowitz doesn't indict someone, it's all a fix. This is more of non-indictment, saying the crimes are so heinous. I just read them to you. Those crimes are horrifying when you actually look at the vows that Andrew McCabe took and the position he was in and the documents he had to sign and the security agreements and all this stuff. No. He would go to jail for the rest of his life for this. But they declined to prosecute. We told you this would happen. And this is a one-page document. So in other words, the 5, and this is the part that I'm going to get upset about. I better back off from the phone.
Doot, doot. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, microphone. I have to yell at you sometimes.
Just take a deep breath and let it out normally.
Well, Frigg, I did bet on this, and so I'm sure that I won the bet. I can't remember what you bet on. I bet that all 5... Yeah, I bet that all 5 investigations on Andrew McCabe would be swept under the rug through a separate investigation that would basically question him on all of those other things, including his wife, including Uranium One, including Russian Tinam, including sending those Russians to jail, 10 years of allowing a dozen different Russian spies in America that literally one of them, when she got home to Russia, said, I was one step away from Hillary Clinton. In other words, the Russians didn't need to spy on Clinton. One of her assistants was a Russian spy. That's a fact. And this is, but wait, there have been gag orders placed upon the people who were used in this sting that put the Russians in jail, William Douglas Campbell, and that was Robert Mueller who did that, and it was Andrew McCabe who committed those crimes. So all of those crimes and everything that Horowitz asked him about, Horowitz is saying he's clear of. Now remember, Horowitz had, how many investigations did Sessions hand over to him? We know that there were 5 investigations of Andrew McCabe. We know that there were 4 investigations of Clinton's foundation. We know there was the midterm exam, which never had Clinton as an object of the investigation, and that's the reason she was completely exonerated. So in other words, the midterm exam was looking at whether there was any breach of any security contracts on a person that they never spoke to, never investigated. Okay? So that was another one of the investigations. But anyway, the point is, Horowitz has given complete exoneration on the same day that Robert Mueller, in his statement of his investigation, will not exonerate the president, even though he says that it is illegal for him to attempt to indict a sitting president for a crime or to hold him for obstruction of justice in a fake witch hunt because there was no crime. So if there was no collusion, there can be no obstruction. The Democrats aren't intelligent enough to understand that concept. There should have never been, just as Barr said, no Section 2 to Robert Mueller's investigation. But what did Robert Mueller dwell on, and what did the press dwell on? That he could not exonerate Trump, and that Trump lied saying that he was exonerated of obstruction of justice. Stop. He was exonerated of obstruction of justice because it couldn't be charged of a sitting president. It's not possible. And every single innuendo of anything that wasn't what the Democrats liked is in Section 2 of the Robert Mueller investigation, and it's going to be used to create a pattern of activities that is not becoming to the president. They're not going to go after high crimes and treason, no, and misdemeanors, no. They're going to go after a series of events that they didn't like, that insinuated that it wasn't the quality that a president should have. They've already stated this. Al Green stated it.
But all the millions of people who voted for Trump, we like his quality. So why do these people think they can override the vote of the American people?
Because they have a Michael Horowitz that can let an Andrew McCabe commit conspiracy and a regime change, a color revolution against our president to try to unseat. We know by his communications between Page and Strzok that Andrew McCabe had an institutionalized leaking system that leaked lies that, in fact, were to overthrow our sitting president and were against, of course, all national security issues. And he became a war actor when he did that. Same thing with Page and Strzok. But what's happening to them? Nothing. Because why they were questioned by Horowitz, and 55,000 text messages back and forth between them. They weren't lovers, as Frigg keeps pointing out. She won that bet, and she bet big on that one, and I lost huge on that one. Because think of it, folks. There was not one loving word between them ever.
I know. Well, a woman would know.
But they were allowed, because Horowitz allowed Strzok himself to go and strike everything he wanted that was of a personal nature in their texts on government-owned and controlled secure lines paid for by we the people. They got to strike all of the evidence that should have put them in jail for treason. And then they lost so many of them, and then the phone was lost, and one of the phones didn't really record anything, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Okay, well then, let me quote from Douglas Gabriel. Quote, "Truth goes to the IG office to die," close quote. So it worked out just fine for them. That's their plan.
That's what they always do. Remember, the IG of the Department of Justice for FISA court found it in absolute 100% noncompliance. It should have been closed. But what happened? Nothing. They wrote a correction plan. They didn't even do the correction plan. And Comey still has the audacity to come out and make statements as if he is a moral and correct, honest, truthful person. Why? Because Robert Mueller gave him immunity for all of his crimes that he confessed all the way back to what he and his brother did when they supposedly were kidnapped and held in their house for days and raped by a crazy man, and then realized they could open the window and escape 3 days later. No, we have Crazy Comey thinks he's getting away with all of this. We have Andrew McCabe just got away with all of it. Now, we will never hear. What is that? Barr just took her off the bench and made him, what's her name, Lou? No, Jessie Lou?
Oh, yeah, Jessie Lou.
Okay, Jessie Lou just got taken off the bench. She was in charge of the Andrew McCabe grand jury indictment for lack of candor. And we don't have any reports on that except James Baker, one of the first people they interviewed. And that was so long ago, everyone's forgotten.
I thought Jessie Lou was at the Department of Justice, about third down.
She's moved over there now.
Oh, okay.
He took her off the bench.
I just want to make sure we got the right one. Oh.
So that she would be, taken out of commission.
Well, yeah.
Taken out of commission. Now she has to listen to what Barr tells her instead of having the supreme
These are slimy
monarchical power to determine that Andrew McCabe didn't have a lack of candor and the many times he lied to Michael Horowitz, who was his friend anyway. Why did he even need to lie to Michael Horowitz? Look, Michael Horowitz just gave him a get-out-of-jail-free card. Okay? We told you this was going to happen, but we didn't tell you it would happen on the same day that Robert Mueller would come out with his pathetic, and I think we've already had a video on that. Didn't I listen to Thomas and Betsy absolutely rip that up earlier?
Yeah, baby.
Is that where I got some of my...
Yes.
Okay.
This audio was to touch base on the IG report that was just released.
Okay,
which you did.
I made a bet with Sundance.
Just do a little speculation. Okay.
I made a bet with Sundance and all the Q people that they were wrong.
They're wrong.
And I bet a nickel. And y'all owe me a nickel. Because you know why? You were dead wrong. And if you think Horowitz in his... now, remember, this is his second report. The first one was on the politicalization of the DOJ and the FBI, which he found that it was all bias, no indictments, nobody got in trouble, and only Andrew McCabe had to go to a grand jury indictment so it could be hidden.
I thought they had to do some training or something.
Oh, they had to get some kind of sensitivity training because you want to know why? They were all taking bribes from the media and they all were institutionally leaking, and he found that. And so they all had to have a little bit of training on that so they wouldn't get caught next time. Shall I mention, what's his name? Devlin Barrett? Shall I mention Al V. Watkins? Shall I mention CNN?
AT&T CNN.
Of course, AT&T CNN. Shall I mention Jeff Bezos' Washington Post? Shall I mention Carlos Slim's New York Times? Shall I mention the other propagandists who were already paid? Because we know those were paid, and all 6 of the people involved in the Russian PP dossier were paid by Fusion GPS and or by the FBI, and they got their money, Fusion GPS, $12 million from Perkins Coie through, of course, the Hillary Victory Fund and the Democratic National Committee through John Podesta. So, don't forget what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with the worst weaponization of the most powerful organizations on the face of the earth, and Trump has knocked them all out. Each one at a time, got in the ring. He knocked them out. Name someone he hasn't knocked out. Please, send the message up to Asgard through the Yggdrasil tree.
He hasn't knocked out Hillary Clinton. She's still walking around.
Odin and Frigg sit up there.
Hillary Clinton's still walking around. All these thugs are still walking around. So no, he has not knocked out any of them.
But look at this. He can't until we told everyone, because as we bet on this, we bet that, of course, the rest of the IG investigations conducted by Horowitz and Huber were a total fraud and scam, and they're going to find no indictments. It doesn't take a genius to figure that out, but no one else is saying that besides us and our friends. And so don't hold your breath. Do not hold your breath. Horowitz is not a white hat, and we already heard Barr say that Horowitz's report's going to come out in May or June, and it takes months for anything to get going. So this John Durham, who's actually really looking at the history of the beginnings of Crossfire Hurricane and already knowing, because Barr has already said, oh, no, it goes back further than when John Brennan got involved in Crossfire Hurricane. It goes back before that, and he knows that, and he said that publicly, so John Durham's going to have to look at the truth. Truth that it goes back to the first payments to Christopher Steele in March. And it was made by the
year?
FBI.
Say the year.
2016.
2016.
So, and it came directly out of the approval of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Dianne Feinstein, Mark Warner, and the traitor Richard Burr, who's going to be right up there with that other traitor, Amish, whatever his name is. These are people trying to make their name in history to stand up against a man they can't stand up against. Do they not understand that every time you insult Trump, you insult 65% of America? You lost all of us as listeners, and no one believes a word you say after that. Because we've watched Trump. He hasn't lied. He's not a pornographer who's what did Maxine just call him? A porn star, a fornicator? These people are sick in their minds because they're so desperate. Why? Every person who's desperate, look at their bank accounts and look at how they got there. We've revealed it to you. A Weinstein, a Adam Schiff, a Maxine Waters, any of them.
Well, you mean Feinstein in this way, but Weinstein is another issue.
I always say Feinstein. I'm sorry. Please excuse me. I always say Larry Podesta too when it's actually Tony.
Okay, wrap it up.
I have to wrap it up?
Well, yeah,
Frig, we're timeless Norse gods and goddesses up here, okay? There's no time. This is Asgard. Oh, no, that's not true. Asgard came to an end in Ragnarok. Guess we got to hurry. Here's the deal.
What's the next play in the swamp? What are we going to look for next?
The next play in the swamp is there's going to be more Horowitz releases, and they're going to exonerate everybody.
Okay.
And so that he can still have a job, because they need a fixer in D.C., because guess what? If you think that Robert Mueller made the salary of an FBI director when he was the FBI director, you're silly. Multiply that times $10 million a year, okay? And the same thing was supposed to happen with Horowitz. It was his big deal. When you break into the top and you're the top fixer for the White House cabal, whoever it is, which has really been one family for the last few decades, when you become Horowitz, when Horowitz was supposed to become Mueller, he was supposed to be the ultimate fixer. You're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions, in your decisions on the way that you allow HSBC to steal $200 billion and to pay $5 million fine. This is what happens, folks. Horowitz was the next setup. So he's supposed to be looking at all kinds of things. He's supposed to be arresting the leakers. So far, there's been no indictments for leakers through Horowitz. How stupid could anybody be? Even immunity given from Robert Mueller to Comey does not exonerate him of all the leaks to Daniel Richman and the New York Times. Oh, my heavens. An idiot could go out and arrest dozens of leakers and put them in jail tomorrow without even one lawyer. One lawyer. That's all it would take. We know exactly when they did it. We have the proof. We have their text messages. We have them admitting it in testimony. Nothing. Nothing from Michael Horowitz. No indictments. Nothing. And now Andrew McCabe, we told you before when Andrew McCabe came out on his book tour, guaranteed that Jesse Liu is going to absolutely bring no charges against him in his grand jury indictment for lack of candor. And at that point, we just reaffirmed that we had already said Michael Horowitz will find none of the 5 investigations on Andrew McCabe will go nowhere. And what do they list here? Some of the most heinous crimes you can do. And they find that they are going to deny prosecution. Now, does that mean that Barr has to deny prosecution? No. But what did Horowitz do? That was his alibi. Well, I found these crimes. What about all the rest of the crimes with his wife, with accepting the money, with the uranium one, with the da-da-da-da? What about all those crimes?
Horowitz is trying to get himself off the hook, too, by saying, well, I found these crimes.
Just like he did with his first report. Lots of bias, irregularities, breaking all the standard rules, but I don't find anything happened wrong here. You didn't notice the conspiracy for literally an assassination attempt, or certainly a regime overthrow, getting rid of a sitting president? You didn't notice that, Mr. Horowitz, in the politicalization?
No, he did notice it, but it shows that he's on the enemy side.
That's the point.
Because that's what the enemy is trying to do, to destroy America from the inside. They've already infiltrated our government with the senior executive service. Horowitz is one, Huber, Sessions, Mueller, they're all there. It's so obvious and in your face.
Now, I'm sorry to have to say it, but here's the truth. Mexico owns Pelosi and Schumer. China owns Mitch McConnell and used to own
Feinstein.
Pretty boy, who was the head of the House. I forgot his name.
Ryan.
Because he's
Paul
so
Ryan.
awful.
Paul
Awful being.
Oh, yeah, awful.
Nothing but lies ever came out of his mouth.
But what
and
about
guess
Feinstein?
who the biggest... Oh, Feinstein?
Yeah, she's
total Chinese.
China. Okay.
She is the queen of China.
Fi Chai.
She's the queen of China. I'm sorry. She's the queen of China. And if you don't know that, listen to what she said recently about China. Well, we have to tell China just to get out of our infrastructure. You let them in. And that's the reason Hillary Clinton's emails all went to China with a courtesy copy. Now, guess what? The biggest Russian and Chinese communists in America were Bill and Hillary Clinton, bar none. No one compares.
You know, Hillary kind of gives it away when she wears those Mao Zedong pantsuits.
You're so funny. Frigg, that's the reason we can laugh for eternity up here in Asgard. You know, we Aesir gods and goddesses, we have a good life. But I like, as Odin, to come down dressed as the Grey Wanderer with my eye patch over my left eye. Had to give it up to put it in the well of Mimir. And my gray suit. And people treated us with respect in those days, remember?
Yeah. It was a good
When we
old
go
days.
down amongst the humans, they treat every wanderer, every visitor, as if they are Odin or Frigg. And they give them the best piece of their meat, the best piece of their best one. Whatever the best is. Every visitor. Because why? The visitor brought them what? Frigg, I'm going to bet you can get the answer to this. What did and what do our Norse followers believe Frigg or Odin in the form of a visitor is going to give them when they feed them this dinner to a visitor who just comes knocking at the door as the sun's going down? Intelligence. What's happening in the next village? What's happening down the road? What's happening with the storm that's coming? Any intelligence rules the world. Where do you get your intelligence? From the well of wisdom of Erd. That's the reason you're right so often.
Intelligence is interesting because when you're in a war, and we are in a war, it's an information war, you have to get above the landscape of the battlefield. And that's what we did. And we said, we got to go out and find information that we can put together in an intelligent manner that nobody out there is grabbing for us, that can help whoever might be listening. And so it's the intelligence. What we get in propaganda is just information thrown at us. It doesn't have context and meaning, really.
We devised what we're telling you not as a mythological silliness. It's the truth.
Yes.
Each day Odin has two crows go out, one to the east, one to the west. They gather information, bring it back at evening, whisper it in his ear, and he tries to bet against his wife.
Well, that's the cat report.
That's the cat report, exactly.
Everything is, I go out and say, what would Thomas like to know? And so I see things that I know interest him, and I put it there for him, and then what he does is he digests it. And then we do an audio where he's digested that for you and then explains it to you in a way you can understand.
And the conclave and her team members feed information so that then we can have more intelligence so that we can literally bet on the future with, fake nickels. Why? Because this is a war. If our strategy isn't clear and ahead of the enemy, we will lose. That's what 5G is about. 5G is about making sure China doesn't get control of 5G, and then what? All devices connected to 5G. Hello, that's the future.
Well, it is the end of humanity as we know
Exactly.
it.
It's an extinction event, and extinction events happen in mythologies where the old gods are overthrown or either go on by the young gods. The Aesir gods live up in the high branches of Yggdrasil, and they come down to Earth every day through the Rainbow Bridge, the rainbow. Only they can walk on it. We humans can't walk on it. But in the end of time, Ragnarok, there's a big battle, but their children go on. A new rainbow bridge appears, and they walk across it to a new land. And there is hope, and that's what we are about. There is a second American Revolution going on now to overthrow the Purple Revolution of George Soros here in America, to have open borders and to overthrow our Constitution and a sitting president. He's done it 14 times before. The CIA has been involved in dozens of these in more countries than you can name, over 24 different countries. The CIA has unseated a duly elected person because they didn't like their politics, and it's happening here in America. And if you don't realize it, then as Odin, I'm telling you, wake up, earthlings, because your leader is amongst you, and if you do not continue your prayers for him, because I'm 100% certain as Odin that it is the prayers of the faithful of America, and because Donald Trump has committed no crimes, and therefore he is an innocent, and he is being used, as Christians believe, that anyone appointed to a high position like that is actually can be used by the divine, and that's the divine right of kings they used to have. But hey, if they don't do their job, get rid of them. We are praying for Donald Trump. So it doesn't surprise me that his enemies are imploding and that the Trump derangement syndrome is affecting many, many people whose level of information is so low that if Odin and Frigg themselves came to their house, they wouldn't even let them in, let alone treat them as honored guests.